there! My name is Samantha Victoria Ann Vernier. I'm 27 years old and I live in a little town called Wait a second. Back up. Let's not give away any spoilers now. Let's rewind a couple decades. The quiet little city of Las Vegas, Nevada. January 18th, 1989. I was born. That's little me. My first ride home was in a limo. Right into the life of luxury, right? Well, not exactly. My parents and older stepsister were living in a little trailer outside the house they were building. It wasn't very much at all, and wasn't by any means permanent. Let me start off my story by mentioning that my parents are both pilots, so it's going to be a bumpy ride. Mom and Dad smartly invested in buying a small grocery store about an hour away in a small town called Pahrump. We moved away from our work in progress for about a year, but things took a total U-turn when my mom felt a bit homesick. So off we went, straight over the big lake to West Sussex, England. We spent a couple years here, and I even developed a cute little accent. Seriously. Somewhere in our basement, there's a videotape of little Sam singing her ABCs with the richest accent ever. During our stay, my little brother Eddie was born. But I was much more invested in developing my artistic skills and taking care of my pet cow, Daisy. At this point, my dad wasn't feeling it, so back we came to the USA. Mom and Dad took up their duties in the supermarket once again. While business was booming, my parents' relationship took a turn for the worse. They separated. In that time, my siblings and I would travel back and forth to visit them. I remember very vaguely my stepsister and I bonded a lot during those sad times. And just as fate would have it, Mom ended up on Dad's doorstep. And boom, in comes Joe, my other younger brother. After a year or two, my mom was becoming drained of the city life in Vegas and missed being surrounded by nature, so we ended up renting a house in Mount Charleston, a cute little mountainous region right outside the city. I started second grade at a small charter school with only 19 people in the entire thing. I remember hiking up and down long mountain trails every day to and from school. We moved to a beautiful log house that one day caught fire and we lost everything except for the family photo albums, strangely enough. The firefighters thought it would be funny to take a picture of my little brother Eddie with a lighter in his hand. My mom was so mad. School was fun, but I was quickly casted as the role of a nerd. I had a harem of about 4 or 5 boys who always wanted to play video games with me. Foreshadowing, if I may. By this point, my family was growing and our income was decreasing. Both of my parents were totally unemployed, and this was the lowest point we had ever faced as a family. But, of course, we got through it. Looking back now, Eddie and I had our faces too buried in our new N64 to realize that we were having any real monetary problems. Our parents always put us first. Lo and behold, my younger sister Anna was born. That was around the same year that our Volkswagen blew up. I blame Anna. Aviation help was needed once more, so we were off. Now as a big family of 7, straight over to Evergreen, Colorado. This was my 5th grade year and my big discovery of boy bands and Pokemon. My room was absolutely covered in NSYNC and Pikachu. I also started drawing much more, and my style greatly became influenced by anime. On a more somber note, I started getting severely bullied because of my weight. I experienced extreme anxiety to the point of where I pretended to be invisible. Many of my classmates alienated me and told me that they didn't want to be friends with the fat girl. I didn't jive very well with their aesthetics, being the tallest and the fattest in class. Anyways, after my dad was sick of having to trek an hour up and down a mountain for work, we decided to pack up and move to the city of Aurora for my first year of middle school. My 6th grade year was a slurry of being constantly bullied and anxious all the time. I couldn't retain friendships with anybody and I couldn't figure out why. I distanced myself once more while in school, but outside school, I was on top of the world. I became obsessed with Dragon Ball Z and Toonami, and I would always corral the neighborhood kids around to play Super Saiyans with me. We'd bike around the park until the street lamps came on. Those are some of my favorite memories. Video games and anime became my escape. I started imagining the characters as my friends in real life and developing my own imaginary ones. Mom took a turn for the worse and slumped into a terrible depression. She missed the mountains dearly, and my dad knew what we had to do. We reluctantly moved back up to Evergreen into a new house we affectionately called the Horsey House. It was a gorgeous house surrounded by fields with horses and bison. 7th grade year of school, and once again a fresh slate. By this point, I was an angry and confused preteen. I was so enveloped in making myself appear to look like a boy, I wouldn't be caught doing or wearing anything girly. I had a lot of identity issues with myself. Luckily for me, I was seated next to another poor soul in need of a best friend, and we connected instantly. Kelly and I were the weird girls, to put it mildly. We used to create these imaginary personas for ourselves and write fictional stories involving our favorite characters from series, aka fanfictions, to pass the time. And boy, did it help us get over that middle school misery. While the other girls were busy fawning over the real boy, she and I were perfectly content with our fictional boyfriends. It sounds strange, but it somehow helped us stay happy. I still have so many of the drawings she created for me. They'll be buried with me one day. Things were perfect until my dad solemnly bore us the bad news about another job offer. I felt completely destroyed. I was being pulled away from the only real friend I had ever made. How am I going to brave high school without my bestie? What would happen to Kelly, and how would she feel about it? Would she hate me forever? I grew increasingly more anxious by the day. Dad flew to Connecticut by himself, offering to work from there while we could stay put, but it didn't feel right that he was there and we were all the way on the other side of the US. So we remorsefully packed our bags and dragged our feet all the way to Lordship, Connecticut. Starting high school in a completely different state without my best and only friend was extremely hard on me. Our family was crammed into a little matchbox of a house near Long Island, New York. We certainly weren't making much money during this time. I remember our Christmas tree was a picture we had created and hung on the wall that year. Mom cried a lot. I created a persona for myself so that people would like me. No longer was I the anime nerd, but I would be a peppy jock. I joined the junior varsity basketball team. I made friends with the wrong crowd very quickly, but after a few weeks I ended up funneling back into my place with the social outcasts. My anime posters were hung back up. It felt right. After being treated so horribly before, I realized that it was my mission from then on out to sit with every new person or to make new friends with anyone who looked lonely. I wanted to pay it forward like Kelly had done for me. After only a year, and just as I was going steady with my first boyfriend, we were told that my dad had been offered a job that he just could not turn down. In hindsight, that matchbox just wasn't suited for a family of firecrackers like mine. We bowed Connecticut a sad farewell and skeptically made our way to Kentucky. We moved into a big, beautiful house right outside a park and a nature preserve. My mom was in love and my dad couldn't be happier. We started making much more money, and we were able to actually live comfortably for the first time in our lives. Oh, we had an actual Christmas tree that year too. My remaining 3 years of high school were a mixed bag of good and bad. I met my next best friend, Marissa, almost instantaneously. She was a super cool, fun-loving party girl with a love of motorcycles, and I was her nerdy comedic relief sidekick. She was my lifeline and I was hers, like two peas in a pod. I found myself at a goth nightclub every Saturday night, and ended up befriending some really nice, misunderstood teens. I ended up making a trip to Canada to meet a boy that I had been talking to online. He ended up living with us illegally while we dated for 2 years. We had a Dungeons & Dragons group that would meet every Friday in the basement, Papa John's pizza and Coke at the ready. Fun times aside, I was fighting a really bitter and angry internal battle. I eventually surrounded myself with people who made me feel awful about my appearance and encouraged me to speak badly about others. It made me wonder why I never seemed to get along with anyone my age. With my dad always flying and my mom caught in a depressive rut, I had to handle things myself. I dwindled my friendships down to a couple people and alienated myself socially at school. I picked up a sort of den mother position to my siblings and their friends, and we all became very close. I loved spending time with them and watching them grow, and even more so, being idolized as a role model. I gave up on making friends my age. All they cared about was weed and alcohol, two things I was avidly against as a teen. My siblings and their friends had such fun, vivid imaginations and were always happy to have me around, so I took that role on with pride. It helped me realize that I could make a big difference in young people's lives. I had always wanted to be an artist growing up, but if I could make a difference in a child's life, that was my new mission. I went straight to community college after high school. My grades had fallen pretty drastically within the past few years because of my severe ADHD problems, but it didn't stop me from getting all my basic courses out of the way. I had my heart set on changing the world. When I eventually moved to Southern Indiana for my elementary education degree, I dropped it within a year. I had lost my drive to teach when a counselor had told me that she wouldn't want her kids being taught with someone with grades like mine. I remember driving straight to my parents' house, sobbing my eyes out. I was crushed. My dad graciously offered me a job at his newly created fancy airline charter business in Ypsilanti, Michigan, Business Jet Managers, Inc. I happily accepted the position of office manager. I figured it would be a great way for me to start off my adult life while I could figure myself out for a bit. Working for him has been a blessing. On a cheesy side note, I took a personal risk and dipped my feet into the world of cosplay for the first time. Anna and I decided to dress up and meet up with a group of people who quickly became our lifelines. It was exactly what I needed in my life. Cosplay pulled me out of a lot of self-doubt and insecurity. I finally had a source of encouragement and positivity after being so down on myself in high school. I started to volunteer my time in front of huge crowds at conventions, overcoming a lot of stage fright. I met my next best friend Sammy through an improv entertainment panel she had a hand in creating, thus opening a door to dozens of more people who I still hold very close to my heart. Sammy taught me to laugh loud and always keep my head high, even in the face of adversity. There will never be words to describe quite what the cosplay scene has done for me. Imagine, from very young, tirelessly trekking through a deserted wasteland on an alien planet. You're scared and alone and confused as to why you're there. There are people that look like you, but they laugh at you and turn their backs whenever you ask them for help, which makes you paranoid and anxious. You try to keep yourself sane with the thought that maybe one day something will make sense. And just like magic, it does. You wind up being pulled into the sweet embrace of smiling, kind, incredible people who know your journey. The same people who bury their faces in books and video games to escape reality. Those who have been bullied into silence. Those who have had fictional boyfriends and girlfriends. And nobody here would ever make you feel terrible about yourself because we've all been through the exact same things. With open eyes came an open mind. I was able to release a lot of the pent-up bitterness and anger that rolled over from high school. The insecure, anxious girl from before had blossomed into a confident, empathetic young woman who wanted to give back to a community that had done so much for her. I started selling my artwork at conventions and opening up commissions. I learned how to sew and build impressive props. I volunteered my time to put on presentations about self-help and confidence building. I ended up with a very small fan base that I wouldn't trade for anything. So there you have it. I currently live in Michigan with my 3 cats and job at the airport with my dad and Joe, who helps me with office work. I'm still very much working on overcoming my anxiety and getting along with people my age, but I'm sure that'll happen with time and patience. Kelly, Marissa, and Sammy are still very big parts of my life, and I thank them greatly for that. I continually surround myself with only the best people who teach me how to become a better Sam. It's been an incredibly spontaneous and rocky 27 years, and I hope for at least 60 more. To be continued.